I would like to tell you a story of Central Park, a treasure of nature hidden in the heart of Manhattan. Nestled amongst the trees of Central Park lies a magical icon called Tavern on the Green, and yours truly was very lucky to be part of it. Throughout its history, the Tavern on the Green underwent many changes. I got to witness many of these changes as I worked and hosted the tavern's champagne dancing program. Let me tell you how the story begins. Many years ago, I was browsing through the newspaper and I saw a talent scout advertising for featured dancers at the Tavern on the Green. I answered the ad and you know what? I got the job. Mr. Baum was the manager of the Tavern on the Green in New York. He was a very influential restaurateur, and whatever he touched turned to gold. Later on, after the Tavern on the Green, he opened a restaurant as called Windows of the World at the World Trade Center. In order to do the show, one needed a partner, and at that time, a young man from Cleveland, Ohio, came to New York and went to the studio and applied for a job. His name was Terry Leon. Terry met the approval of Mrs. Murray, and with her blessings, we had a show every Friday and every Sunday night. The show featured many wonderful dancing and musical guests, featuring ballroom, Latin, and jazz. We danced and performed in every part of the Tavern on the Green, including the outdoor dance floor where people dined al fresco. In those days, women attending wanted to look glamorous. In order to do so, they wore cocktail dresses, pearls, and high heels, and the gentlemen wore dinner jackets and neatly folded white handkerchiefs in their pockets. In the Rose Room, we performed to the music of Milton Saunders and his wonderful orchestra. The Rose Room had a circular floor and it was painted in colors of red and pink. It was a beautifully decorated room, and the musicians played on a round stage, and yours truly did a spin in the jitterbug and caught her skirt in the drum and pulled the drum right off the bandstand. What a scene that was. For the program, we would perform for the audience and then host a dancing contest. The winning couple would receive a bottle of champagne. Mambo and cha-cha were the popular dances of that time. For that, we danced to the band of Al Castellanos and his rumbas. Al Castellano was a rival to Tito Puente and Tito Rodriguez. He was a wonderful performer and innovator for mambo and cha-cha music at that time. Many of our wonderful dance nights were held in the Elm Tree Room. The room was constructed around a huge elm tree and filled with twinkling lights. Meanwhile, the famous saxophone player, Eleanor Jacquet, played in the Chestnut Room, which she called the jazz capital of the world. After a while, Mr. Baum retired, and his place was taken by Mr. Warner Leroy of Warner Brothers family of movies. Mr. Leroy was an over-the-top kind of man, known for his loud, checkered jackets covered in rhinestones and sequins, and he looked like a 4th of July sparkling balloon. Mr. Leroy wanted to redesign the Tavern on the Green with more glamour, and he wanted to make sure the Tavern on the Green lived up to his expectations. The tavern was redesigned with dazzling carved wood, Tiffany-colored glass, and crystal chandeliers, and yours truly kicked the crystal chandelier once during rehearsal and broke it. A glass-enclosed crystal room was added with expanded dance floor. It was here we hosted Mr. and Mrs. Murray as honored guests. Terry and I took turns behind the microphone. When Terry took over, he made a major flop with his lines. He said, "Ladies and gentlemen, may I please introduce to you two extinguished guests." Everybody had a big laugh, and then I took over the microphone and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce two distinguished guests," which was worthy of them. In addition to Mr. and Mrs. Murray, the Tavern on the Green was frequented by celebrities like Arlene Francis, Sid Caesar, and Betsy Palmer. The Tavern on the Green achieved a social significance of its era that rivaled the Stork Club. Another fun event at the Tavern on the Green was the Straw Hat Awards. The awards luncheon was presided by Cary Grant and featured Betty Davis as a guest. As time went on, the Tavern became the top grossing restaurants in the country, and our show was a huge success. I was still working at the UN at the time, and I kept my dancing life a secret. To help keep the secret, I danced under the stage name also known as AKA Pat Traymore, but at the UN they knew me as Patricia Tamertosh. One night, as I was getting ready for the show, I saw a group of ambassadors congregating outside the open air of the Tavern on the Green. I immediately ran to Terry and said, "Terry, I can't do the show because these UN ambassadors know me as someone else. I'm not a dancer." He looked at me and he said, "We have to. You are going to wear a ball gown. You're going to have mesh stockings on. You're going to have makeup on. No one's going to recognize you. And besides, we have a contract." So I said, "Okay." The next day when I went to the UN, some of the ambassadors said, "Hey, I saw a girl dance last night, looked just like you. Was it you?" I answered, "No, me? I don't dance." They said, okay, they accepted it. But I knew my life was short-lived as an imposter, so I resigned from the UN and worked at the studio full-time. It was Terry's encouragement and partnership that got me through that day. That was a very difficult day, but he got me through and he became my best friend. The 7-year run at the Tavern on the Green made the tavern feel like home and him like part of my family. Terry and I became best friends, and one night during a pro show, his wife approached me and said, "May I substitute for you? I'd love to dance with my husband." I said yes. She went on the floor, and during a twirl, her wig flew off her head and slid across the floor. She went chasing that wig under a table and didn't come out. And I never had to worry about losing my best friend again. Terry Leon was the longest dance partner I had. And after 7 years, Terry moved to Dallas, Texas to run his own dance studio. Meanwhile, because I didn't want to move to Florida where the home office was, I got promoted to Director of Dance Research and Development in New York City, and I had an office in Manhattan. Things were changing, and Mr. Leroy was having trouble with the government about his show at the Tavern on the Green, and that is the time when the show came to a tragic end. The last show was Bittersweet. It was an end of an era, the end of two people enjoying and loving, dancing and performing. But the Tavern on the Green will always have a very special place in my heart.